First Elder Kethvorin Ix was the first to stand, his crystalline body pulsing with colors that his people used to express shame and sorrow. And every eye in the hall turned to watch him as he moved toward the human delegation. He was the descendant of the Silurian who had delivered the verdict against humanity a century ago. And the weight of that inheritance had pressed upon him since the day he first learned what his ancestor had done. My forefather believed he was protecting the galaxy when he spoke the words that condemned your people, Kethvorin said, his voice trembling with emotions that Silurians rarely allowed themselves to feel. And he died believing that he had done the right thing. He stopped a few steps away from Admiral Lin Mei-Shing and looked into her human eyes. But I have studied the records of that day, he continued, and I have read the words your great-grandmother spoke before she left the council chamber. His crystals dimmed to colors that signified deep regret. She was right, he said. And we were wrong. The other council members rose from their seats one by one, each carrying the shame of their ancestors and the hope that perhaps it was not too late to make things right. Sethkarol of the Velkari stepped forward, his ancient scales showing the scars of the plague that had nearly killed him as a child. When the sickness came to my world, I watched my parents die before my eyes, he said, and I prepared myself to follow them into the darkness because there was no cure and no hope. He clasped his clawed hands together in a gesture of gratitude. Then your medicine arrived from nowhere, he continued, and it saved me along with billions of others who would have died without it. His voice broke as he spoke the next words. I spent 60 years wondering who had helped us and why, he said. And now I know that it was the same people we had tried to imprison. The Reth Collective spoke with their unified voice, thousands of minds thinking as one. We were certain that we would die in the void between galaxies, they said, lost and afraid and waiting for our ships to fail and our people to perish. Their shared consciousness flickered with the memory of that terrible time. Your star charts led us to safety when we had given up all hope, they continued. And every Reth alive today owes their existence to the kindness of a species we had helped to condemn. One by one, each of the elder race leaders shared their stories of being helped by mysterious gifts from unknown sources. And one by one they acknowledged that humanity had saved them when vengeance would have been so much easier. And when they had finished speaking, silence filled the hall. Lin Mei-Shing stood at the center of that silence, her hand still extended. Waiting for an answer to the question she had asked, Kethvorin Ix moved toward her with slow and uncertain steps, his crystalline body flickering with lights that expressed hope and fear in equal measure. We failed you, he said, and we failed ourselves. And we failed everything that the Galactic Concord was supposed to represent. He stopped directly in front of her. We looked at your people and saw only a threat to be managed, he continued, and we never asked what you dreamed of or what you hoped to build or why you reached for the stars. His voice steadied as he spoke the next words. We were arrogant and blind and cruel, and nothing we say or do can erase the suffering we caused. He extended his own crystalline appendage toward her waiting hand. But if you will have us, he said, and if you can find it in your hearts to forgive us, we would like to try again. Lin Mei-Shing looked at his outstretched limb, and in that moment she thought of her great-grandmother who had walked away from the council a century ago with dignity and grace. She thought of the humans who had grown up behind the barrier, believing themselves prisoners of an unjust system. She thought of the children who had asked why the galaxy hated them and the parents who had no good answers to give. And she thought of a drawing that had been passed down through 4 generations stick. Figures of different species holding hands beneath alien suns. Created by a little girl who believed that friendship was possible. Lin Mei-Shing took the Silurian's hand. We have been waiting 100 years for you to ask, she said, across the station, across the fleet, across every human settlement and ship scattered through the galaxy. Silence fell as the broadcast of this moment reached billions of watching eyes, but this was not the silence of condemnation, or judgment, or fear. This was the silence of a new beginning. The other council members stepped forward to join hands with the human delegation. Each touch a promise that the past would not define the future. And as they stood together, the barriers that had separated them for a century began to crumble on Earth. Behind the barrier that would soon fall, an old woman sat in her small apartment and watched the broadcast with tears streaming down her face. In her hand she clutched a worn piece of paper, a child's drawing that her grandmother had made 100 years ago, and that her mother had kept, and that she had treasured through all the long years of waiting. The stick figures holding hands beneath alien suns had faded with age, but the hope they represented was as bright as ever. The old woman kissed the drawing and pressed it to her heart. "You were right," she whispered to the grandmother she had never met. And they finally understand. In the great hall of Sanctuary Station, the leaders of 8 species stood together for the first time in galactic history, united not by fear or conquest, but by the simple choice to reach out instead of push away. The silence was still coming, a darkness that would test their alliance to its limits. But they would face it together, human and Silurian, Valkyrie and Reth, and all the others who had learned that the universe was too vast and too beautiful to face alone. And as the broadcast ended and the work of building a new future began, a human child on a distant colony world asked her mother what was happening. Her mother smiled and picked her up and pointed at the stars. "We made new friends today," she said, "and now we are going to save the galaxy together." The child's eyes went wide with wonder. "Can I draw them a picture?" she asked. Her mother laughed and hugged her close. "Yes," she said. "I think they would like that very much." And somewhere in the endless dark between the stars, the silence moved ever closer. But it would find something waiting for it that had never existed before. Not 7 species fighting alone, but 8 civilizations standing together, united by the simple truth that humanity had known all along, that kindness is stronger than cruelty, that hope is more powerful than fear, and that the hand extended in friendship will always accomplish more than the fist raised in anger. The universe was vast and dark and dangerous, but it was also full of light, and now that light was growing brighter. The Grand Council had not met outside their ancient chambers in over 3,000 years. But these were not ordinary circumstances. And so the leaders of the 7 elder races gathered in a great hall aboard Sanctuary Station to face the species they had once tried to cage. The hall was designed to make everyone equal, with no raised platforms or special seats, and humans and elder races sat together at a single curved table that allowed each speaker to be seen by all. Admiral Lin Mei Xing stood at the center of the curve, her posture straight and her voice steady as she addressed the most powerful beings in the known galaxy. 100 years ago, my great-grandmother stood before your council and asked you to see humanity as potential allies rather than threats. She began, and you chose to imprison us instead. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Today I stand before you with a different message. Lin Mei Xing continued, not to ask for your friendship, but to offer you a chance to earn it. She activated the holographic displays that filled the hall with images gathered from humanity's century of exploration. We have traveled beyond the edges of your maps and found the ruins of civilizations that rose and fell before your oldest ancestors were born, she said. And in those ruins, we found warnings left by species who faced the same darkness that is now approaching our galaxy. The images showed ancient structures on dead worlds, covered in writing that told stories of desperate battles and final defeats. They called it the silence because wherever it goes, all life ends, Lin Mei Xing explained, and it moves through the universe like a wave. consuming everything in its path before moving on to the next galaxy. First Elder Kethvorn Ix, the current leader of the Silurian Dominion and a descendant of the one who had condemned humanity, rose from his seat. "How do we know these warnings are real?" he demanded. "And how do we know this is not a trick designed to manipulate us?" Lin Mei-Shing nodded, as if she had expected the question. "You may send your own expeditions to verify everything I have shown you," she said. "And we will provide you with coordinates, translations, and all the research we have gathered over the past century." She looked at the Silurian leader with calm eyes. "We have no reason to lie to you," she said, "because if the silence comes and we are not ready, it will not matter whether we were friends or enemies. We will all be equally dead." The hall fell quiet as the weight of her words settled over the assembly. "But the threat is not why we called you here," Lin Mei-Shing continued, "because we have 800 years to prepare for the silence. And that is enough time to build defenses if we work together." She paused to let her next words carry their full meaning. "The real question before this council is whether we can overcome a century of fear and resentment to become the allies we should have been from the beginning." An ancient Velkari named Sethgarol, who had survived the plague that nearly destroyed his people, spoke up from his seat. "You saved us," he said quietly, "when you had every reason to let us die. You sent us the cure that saved our civilization." Lin Mei-Shing nodded. "We did. Why?" Sethgarol asked, and his voice cracked with emotion that his species rarely showed. "After what we did to you, why would you help us?" Lin Mei-Shing was silent for a moment before answering. "Because we are human," she said simply. "And because causing suffering has never made us feel better about our own pain." She looked around the table at each of the elder race representatives. "My great-grandmother believed that the measure of a species is not found in its power, but in its compassion," she said. "And she taught us that revenge is a poison that destroys the one who carries it." The representatives of the Reth Collective spoke in their unified voice. "We were saved by your star charts when we were lost in the void," they said. "And we have wondered for decades why you would help those who had voted to imprison you." Lin Mei-Shing smiled, a small expression that carried more warmth than any grand gesture could have. "Because you were lost and we knew the way," she said. "And leaving you to die would have meant becoming the monsters you believed us to be." She stepped back from the center of the hall and gestured to the human delegation behind her. "These are scientists, artists, engineers, teachers, healers, and explorers," she said. "And every one of them grew up hearing stories about the day the council tried to cage humanity." The humans in the delegation watched the elder race leaders with expressions that range from curiosity to wariness. "They have every reason to hate you," Lin Mei-Shing said, "and many of them did hate you when they were young. Because hatred is easy and understanding is hard." She returned to her place at the center of the curve. "But we are not here because of hatred or fear or the desire for revenge," she said. "And we are not here to demand apologies or punishment for what was done to us." She placed both hands on the table and leaned forward. "We are here because the universe is vast and dangerous and beautiful. And because we believe that together we can build something greater than any of us could build alone." The hall was silent as every being present considered her words. "The question before this council is not what happened 100 years ago," Lin Mei-Shing said, "because the past cannot be changed and dwelling on old wounds only keeps them bleeding." She straightened and looked at each council member in turn. "The question is what happens tomorrow," she said, "and whether we will face the future as enemies who destroy each other or as partners who lift each other up." She extended her hand, palm open, in the ancient human gesture of peace. "We have shown you who we are and what we can do," she said. "And now we are asking you to show us who you want to become." The council members looked at her outstretched hand. And in that moment, the entire galaxy seemed to hold its breath. 800 years of survival hung in the balance. waiting for an answer that would determine whether civilization would stand or fall. And slowly, one by one, the elder race leaders began to rise from their seats. The coordinates led to a point in space that every star chart showed as empty, a region far from any sun or planet where nothing should exist. And yet when the Council's investigative fleet arrived, they found something that made their sensors scream with impossible readings. A station hung in the void, a structure so vast that it dwarfed the greatest constructions of the elder races. Built from materials that no scanner could identify and powered by energy sources that no physicist could explain, it looked like a city floating in the darkness, with towers that stretched for hundreds of kilometers and lights that glowed with warm welcome. And as the Council fleet approached, they saw ships moving around it, human ships. Thousands of them, more than should have existed in the entire galaxy. The fleet commander, a Velkari admiral named Torath, stared at the station with his old eyes wide with disbelief. "This is impossible," he whispered to his officers, "because we destroyed their shipyards and confiscated their technology a century ago." That the evidence before him could not be denied, a message came from the station, transmitted in perfect Velkari language with no trace of mechanical translation. "Welcome to Sanctuary Station," the voice said, "and the Council delegation is invited to dock at Bay 17, where representatives of the Human Stellar Compact will be waiting to receive you." Admiral Torath had fought in 3 wars during his long career, but nothing had prepared him for the moment when his ship entered the station and he saw what humanity had become. The docking bay alone was larger than most space stations he had visited, and it was filled with humans going about their daily lives, engineers working on ships that bent space like paper, scientists discussing theories that Torath could not begin to understand, children playing games that involved manipulating gravity as if it were a toy. And all of them stopped to watch as the Council delegation walked past. Their human faces showing curiosity, but no fear, no anger, no hatred, just the calm confidence of a people who knew exactly who they were and what they were capable of. A woman waited for them at the end of the docking bay, dressed in a simple uniform that bore no medals or decorations, but carried an authority that needed no symbols to express itself. "I am Admiral Lin Mei Xing of the Human Stellar Compact," she said, "and I am the great-granddaughter of Ambassador Chen Wei Lin, who spoke to your council 100 years ago." She had her great-grandmother's eyes. Torath noticed, dark and steady and filled with an intelligence that missed nothing. "On behalf of humanity, I welcome you to Sanctuary Station," Lin Mei Xing continued, "and I hope that our meeting today will be more productive than the last one." She led them through corridors that seemed to go on forever, past laboratories where humans worked on projects that made the Velkari scientists in the delegation gasp with amazement, past medical bays where diseases that had plagued the galaxy for millennia were being cured, past workshops where new technologies were being born every hour. "You expected to find us behind your barrier," Lin Mei Xing said as they walked, "but we were never as contained as you believed." She stopped before a great window that looked out over the station's central hub, where ships came and went in an endless dance of activity. "When your council ordered our colonies dismantled, we knew that fighting would only prove you right about us," she explained. "So instead, we chose a different path." She turned to face the delegation. "We hid in plain sight, letting you relocate decoy populations while our real people slipped away into regions of space you had never explored. And for a century, we built and learned and grew while you watched an empty shell and congratulated yourselves on your wisdom." Admiral Torath felt his scales flush with shame. "The gifts," he said quietly. "The plague cure and the archive data and the star charts. That was you." Lin Mei Xing nodded. "We could have let the plague kill your people as punishment for what you did to us," she said. "And we could have watched your archive burn and your generation ships die in the void. But that is not who we are." She gestured to the humans working around them. We are builders, not destroyers. And we believe that the universe is large enough for all of us to share. A Silurian delegate stepped forward, his crystals flickering with confusion. Why would you help us after what we did to you? He asked. Lin Mei-Xing looked at him for a long moment before answering. Because revenge is easy and forgiveness is hard, she said. And because my great-grandmother taught us that the measure of a civilization is not how it treats its friends, but how it treats those who have wronged it. She led them to a great hall where holographic displays showed star maps that extended far beyond the boundaries of known space. We have explored regions of the galaxy that your people have never seen, she said. And we have found wonders that would take 1,000 years to describe. The displays shifted to show images of alien worlds, strange life forms, and structures left behind by civilizations that had risen and fallen before the first elder race was born. But we have also found something else, Lin Mei-Xing said, and her voice grew serious. Something that threatens not just humanity, but every living thing in this galaxy. The images changed to show a darkness moving between the stars, a void that consumed everything it touched and left nothing behind. It has no name that we know of, she said, and it destroyed civilizations that were ancient when your oldest ancestors first looked up at the sky. She turned to face the council delegation. It is coming here, moving slowly but steadily, and it will arrive in approximately 800 years. The delegates looked at each other with fear in their eyes. We have called you here because we cannot face this threat alone, Lin Mei-Xing said. And neither can you. She extended her hand toward them in a gesture that humans had used for thousands of years to offer peace. The question is simple, she said. Can we work together or will we die apart? The delegates had no answer, but they knew that they had to find one soon because the darkness was coming. And it would not care whether they had learned to trust each other or not. 100 years passed like water flowing over ancient stones, and the galaxy forgot about humanity. The Great Barrier around Earth stood as a monument to the wisdom of the elder races, a sphere of energy that no ship could pass and no signal could escape. And behind it, 8 billion humans lived their quiet lives under the watchful eyes of orbital monitors. The colonies were gone, dismantled piece by piece over decades of patient work. And the humans who had lived among the stars were returned to their homeworld like children sent to their rooms for misbehavior. The council congratulated themselves on their wisdom and turned their attention to other matters, secure in the knowledge that the human threat had been contained forever. But the universe is vast and full of shadows. And in those shadows something was stirring. The first sign came to the Valkyrie hegemony, a plague that swept through 3 of their core worlds with terrible speed, killing millions before their scientists could even identify what it was. The sickness attacked the Valkyrie nervous system and left its victims paralyzed before death. And every treatment the healers tried failed to slow its spread. For 50 years the Valkyrie searched for a cure, watching their population decline and their great civilization begin to crumble. Until one day, a package arrived at their central medical facility. Inside was a formula for a compound that could cure the plague completely, synthesized from plants that grew only on a small blue world called Earth. No one knew where the package came from. No one could trace its origin. And when the Valkyrie asked the council for answers, they received only silence and confusion. The cure worked perfectly, and within a decade the plague was gone. But the mystery of its origin haunted the Valkyrie leaders for the rest of their lives. The second sign came to the Silurian Dominion, whose great archive contained 12,000 years of art, music, science, and history. They accumulated wisdom of one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. A cascade failure in the archive's central systems threatened to destroy everything, corrupting data faster than the engineers could save it. And for 3 terrible weeks, the Silurians watched their heritage disappear before their eyes. Then the recovery began. Packets of data arrived from nowhere, containing perfect copies of files that had been lost, reconstructed from sources that no one could identify and transmitted through channels that no one could trace. Within a year, the archive was restored, more complete than it had been before the failure. And the Silurian High Council spent decades trying to understand how it had been saved. They never found an answer. The third sign came to the Wrath Collective, whose generation ships carry billions of their kind through the empty void between galaxies on a journey that would last 1,000 years. Navigation failures struck the fleet in the darkest reaches of space, where no stars shone and no help could reach them. And the Wrath prepared themselves for a slow death in the endless dark. But their navigation systems rebooted with new star charts loaded into their memory. Paths through the void that led to safe harbors and resource-rich systems, mapped by explorers who had traveled where no known species had ever gone. The Wrath followed the charts and survived. But when they tried to find who had saved them, they discovered only empty space and silence. And then there was the music. It started on Silurian Prime, in the crystal resonance chambers where the Silurian people gathered to commune with the vibrations of the universe. A new frequency appeared in the cosmic background radiation, a pattern of sound that was not natural and not Silurian. And when the crystals translated it into something their minds could understand, they heard a human lullaby, soft and gentle. The song spoke of love and safety and dreams under distant stars. And the Silurian children found comfort in its melody, while the Silurian elders trembled with fear. Because if humans were singing to the stars, then they were not behind their barrier. They were somewhere else, somewhere the elder races could not see. And they had learned to do things that should have been impossible. The council held emergency sessions to discuss these strange events. But every investigation led to dead ends and every theory fell apart under examination. Some argued that the incidents were coincidences, random acts of fortune that had nothing to do with the contained humans of Earth. But others looked at the pattern and felt a cold chill run down their spines. The plague cure came from Earth's biosphere. The archive data was reconstructed with human organizational methods. The star charts used human mathematical notation, and the lullaby was a song that human mothers had sung to their children for thousands of years. Someone was helping the elder races, saving them from disasters they could not solve alone. And whoever it was did not want to be found. As decades passed and the strange gifts continued, a new rumor began to spread through the galaxy, whispered in dark corners and spoken only among trusted friends. They said that when the colonies were dismantled, not all the humans had returned to Earth. They said that ships had vanished instead of being decommissioned, slipping away into regions of space where no patrol would follow. They said that scientists had escaped the quarantine with their research, continuing their work in hidden laboratories built into the hearts of dead stars. And they said that while the council watched the decoy population behind the barrier, true humanity had spread through the cracks of the galaxy like water finding its way through stone. The elder races had believed they were containing a threat, but perhaps they had only been watching a shadow while the real humans grew beyond their sight. On the anniversary of the 100th year since the verdict, a new signal appeared in the skies above every council world. It was written in light, visible to all who looked up at the stars, and its message was simple. "We would like to talk," it said, "and we will wait at the coordinates provided." It was signed with a single word: humanity, and across the galaxy. The leaders of the elder races looked at the message in the sky and felt the weight of a century of doubt pressing down upon them. They had thought the human problem was solved, but now they understood that it had only been beginning. The question was no longer what to do about humanity. The question was what humanity had become. The great chamber of the Galactic Concord stretched upward into darkness, its walls carved from stone that had witnessed 12,000 years of history. And on this day, it would witness the fate of an entire species. Ambassador Kethvorin of the Silurian Dominion stood at the center of the assembly, his crystalline body glowing with colors that shifted like fire trapped in ice. And around him sat the representatives of the 7 elder races who had ruled the galaxy since before humans had learned to make tools from stone. The Silurians with their bodies of living crystal. The ancient Velkari, whose scaled forms had survived 3 extinction events. The Reth Collective, who shared one mind across billions of bodies. And 4 other species whose names humanity had barely begun to learn. All of them had gathered to decide what would become of Earth and its people. The vote has been cast, Kethvorin announced, his voice ringing through the chamber like a bell made of glass. And the decision is final. He turned to face the small group of humans who sat in the visitors' gallery. 32 men and women who represented 8 billion souls back on Earth and 12 billion more, scattered across the colonies humanity had built. Among the stars, humanity has been classified as an emergent threat to galactic stability, Kethvorin continued, and the Council has determined that immediate action must be taken to protect the civilizations of known space. The words fell like stones into water, sending ripples of whispered conversation through the assembled delegates. And in the visitors' gallery, the human representatives sat in absolute stillness. Ambassador Shen Wei-Lin, the leader of Earth's delegation, was an elderly woman with silver hair and eyes that had seen both the first human starship launch and the birth of colonies on distant worlds. And she listened to the verdict with her hands folded quietly in her lap. Earth will be quarantined behind a barrier of our construction, Kethvorin declared. And all human faster-than-light research will be confiscated for the safety of all species. He paused to let the weight of his words settle over the chamber. Human colonies will be peacefully dismantled and their populations returned to Earth, where they will remain until such time as the Council determines they no longer pose a threat to galactic order. Representatives of the elder races nodded their approval, their faces showing relief that the human problem would finally be solved. And some of them even looked at the human delegation with something like pity in their ancient eyes. They expected the humans to protest, to shout and rage against the injustice of being caged like dangerous animals, because that was what all the reports said about humanity that they were. Emotional creatures who could not control their impulses and who reacted to setbacks with violence. But the human said nothing. Ambassador Chun rose slowly from her seat, her movements careful and deliberate. And every eye in the chamber turned to watch her as she walked to the speaking platform reserved for visitors, honored members of the Council. She began, her voice calm and steady. I have listened to your verdict with great attention, Kethvorin's. Crystals flickered with surprise at her composure. Before we depart, Chun continued, I wish to share something with this assembly. She placed a small device on the platform before her, and from it projected a beam of light that formed into an image above her head. This transmission is being broadcast to every human settlement, ship, and outpost in the galaxy, she said. And 8 billion people on Earth are watching this moment alongside 12 billion of their brothers and sisters on distant worlds. The Council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They are watching because we wanted them to see how the great and wise Council of the Galactic Concord treats a species that has done nothing wrong except reach for the stars. Her voice remained calm, but there was an edge to it now that made some of the delegates look away. In 300 years of contact with your civilization, not a single member of any elder race has visited Earth, Chun said. And not one of you has ever asked us about our dreams, our hopes, or why we build ships to carry us between the stars. She touched the device, and the image above her changed to show a child's drawing stick figures of different species, holding hands beneath alien suns. Their shapes simple, but their meaning clear. My granddaughter drew this picture, Chun said, because she believed that the people of the galaxy would become our friends. The chamber was silent. She is 7 years old, and she has never met anyone who was not human. But she drew Silurians and Velkari and Reth standing beside human children because she believed in the goodness of the universe. Chun looked at the council members one by one, meeting each pair of alien eyes with her steady human gaze. "You have looked at humanity and seen only a threat to be contained," she said. "And you have never once considered what you might have gained if you had extended your hand in friendship instead of raising it against us." She gathered her documents and turned to leave. "We will not beg for mercy that you have already decided to deny," she said. "And we will not fight a battle we cannot win." She paused at the door of the chamber and looked back at the assembled council. "But we will remember this day," she said. "And we will remember that when humanity needed allies, the great civilizations of the galaxy chose to be our jailers instead." The doors closed behind her with a sound that echoed through the ancient stone, and in the chamber of the Galactic Concord, silence fell across the crowd as the council members looked at one another and felt the first cold touch of doubt creeping into their hearts. They had expected anger and received dignity. They had expected threats and received sorrow. And something about the old woman's quiet words had planted a seed of unease that none of them could name. Cathvorin stood at the center of the chamber for a long moment, his crystals dimming to colors that his people associated with uncertainty. And when he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "The verdict stands," he said. But even as the words left him, he wondered if he was making a terrible mistake. Outside the chamber, Ambassador Chen walked through the corridors of the Concord station with her delegation following behind her. And when they reached their ship, she allowed herself one moment to lean against the wall and close her eyes. "Did we do the right thing?" one of the younger delegates asked her. Chun opened her eyes and looked at the stars visible through the viewport. "We showed them who we are," she said. "And now we will show them what we can become." The human ship departed from the station and set course for Earth, carrying with it the last free generation of humanity, or so the council believed. But Ambassador Chen Weilin knew something that the elder races had not yet learned. Something that humanity had discovered long ago in the caves and forests of their homeworld. Cages only work if the prisoner accepts the bars, and humanity had never been good at accepting limits.